What's going on, everyone? My name is Burke, bringing you the Week 2 Power Rankings for PICA. And like always, I am joined by my co-host, Xavier.
Hello, everyone.
So this week, some pretty interesting battles, and like last week, there's going to be a lot of changes to the Power Rankings. It's hard to put people in specific rankings when 8 of the players all have the same record.
Yeah, and another interesting thing is Week 2, all 2-0s except for one match.
Yep, all 2-0s. And they were all very good matches, all very well played. And, so when you have 8-1-1s, it's going to change a lot. And probably next week it's also going to change a lot, but then afterwards it should start leveling off, and who we think is more likely to make the playoffs and who's, the better players than these first few weeks.
Yeah, it'll definitely start balancing out and won't see like huge shifts like we've been seeing past every single one.
Yeah. So let's just get started with number 12. My number 12 is the DMR Shadow Absol still. There's not much really to say. I think they definitely planned much better this week. I give them credit for at least that. And they were playing at least in my opinion, one of the much better teams, one of the much better players, and probably one of the best drafts. And it was only 2-0, but that 2-0 I felt like was more on the fault of the Park Rangers than the Shadow Absols. The Park Rangers had played their end game better. I think it probably could have been like a 4-0 instead of a 2-0. But I think the Shadow Absols are playing better. They're starting to plan better, at least plan better than last week and play better than last week. So hopefully they can really come through next week and pick up their first win.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Also, I have them at number 12 as well. I thought they had a really good start to the match. It's just like in the middle, they just seem to start to peter out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then near the end, he was kind of doing okay in the end, but it was more or less the Vesquin Park Rangers messing up a little bit, making a few misplays at the end. Maybe they got a bit too comfortable. He had Trick on his Latios, and he was able to do that to the Empoleon to cripple it early on in the match. That was probably pretty helpful later on. And I don't think he did bad. I don't think he prepared bad. I don't think he played that bad. It's just he's just not winning, and he hasn't shown me a real reason to put him higher, so I'm just going to leave him at 12 for now.
Yeah. That's why I say, like, at the end, it was only a 2-0, I think, more on the part of the Park Rangers than the Shadow Absols, so then again, it's hard to say how the match could have turned out, but there's not really much more to say about the Shadow Absols. I don't want to see any team do bad, and I really hope they start doing better in the future.
Yeah, I don't want to see anyone keep losing.
Yeah.
It's just not fun.
So, at number 11, moving on, I have the Texas Rhyhorns. Their team is having the problem that I thought was going to be a problem very early in the season. Earlier in the season. They had the problem that they had last week. They've got a very bulky team and almost no offense. Because you look at what he brought this week. He brings the Mega Venusaur, he brings Skarmory, he brings Sylveon, and he does bring more offense than Jolteon, Hitmonlee, and Golem, but it just was not nearly enough to break through the Toronto Tyrantrums team, and I just don't see him playing terribly well. His Sylveon did a lot of work that match, but the way he's going, I don't see him being able to really get through many of the teams offensively, and I don't see his wall's going to be able to do too much defense. His wall's not going to be able to do too much offensively back. Though some things like the Mega Venusaur and the Sylveon might be able to hit back, as we've seen this week with Sylveon getting 3 kills. but it's going to be very hard for him with very little switch initiative and very little offense. So it was only a 2-0 loss, but this is his second loss, 2 weeks in a row. And it's just, I think it's going to be very hard for him in the future to actually make a comeback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with a lot of stuff you said. I feel like he's not trying his hardest. Like, I know he has been pretty busy recently. He's had to do 2 leagues. He's got another job. He's a busy guy. So, I mean, got to cut him a little slack there, but I still have to put him at 11 for basically all the reasons you just said. And another thing that I didn't realize myself until now, his only real good cleric, I believe, is Sylveon.
Mm-hmm.
So that Sylveon will more often than not be forced into a cleric position because a lot of people are probably going to bring like Toxic and Will-O-Wisp against a team like his.
Yeah.
So Sylveon, one of his biggest offensive threats, is being put into a defensive role 9 times out of 10 because he has nothing else to fill that cleric position.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have won. Like, he played a little sloppily around the Reuniclus. If he might have had knockoff on his Hitmonlee, he might have been able to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Hindsight is hindsight. He wasn't able to win. If he had won, he'd definitely be higher. But he's not going to win. Can't put him higher.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely struggling with, at least offensively.
Yeah.
When you have a team like that, it's definitely going to struggle offensively when you have to throw everything you got in defensive roles.
His team is annoying, I'll give him that much.
That it is. I think we can move on to number 10. I think we start disagreeing at this point. I have the Sequim Malamar at number 10. And I know they won, but, the next, 7 or so spots are all, the 1-1. So it's going to be... Yeah, I have him at 10 just because he did win this week, and he did win against the Burkham Bastardons, which I think is a good team. They did win, last week. But the problem with the Sequim Malamar I see is just I don't know how consistent they're going to be with this team. To me, it wasn't one of the better teams. I did not like their draft, and I'm just worried about how consistent they're going to be. Now, if they can keep winning, obviously they're going to be moving up. But for right now, they got their first win. It was another 2-0. And I think they can win in the future. I just don't know how consistent they're going to be able to get wins.
Yeah, it all makes sense. For me, I had my number 10 as the Middle-earth Magmortars. Mainly because I've seen him do pretty well. He's made some interesting sets. His Infernape, especially this week, was really weird. It was Sword Stance, Slack Off. I think it was physically defensive.
Yeah, physically defensive.
Yeah, and Mach Punch in close combat. He had Blaze on it for some reason. I don't know why he didn't go Iron Fist, because it just never crossed his mind. So, he's been having some interesting sets, and he's been planning out pretty well, but I just don't see... I feel like that set wasn't the right choice to bring because he had a Crocodile, which was his win condition. Only thing on his team, on his opponent's team, that could really stop the Crocodile was the Chestnut. His Infernape, one of his best ways to kill the Chestnut, didn't have a fire move. So that means it's just walled by the Chestnut.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just adding on to things that can be walled by the Chestnut. He did have other methods to kill it, but I feel like if he could get rid of that early on in the game, he could have been able to bring in the Crocodile, put huge dents in every time it came in. Because after that Chestnut went down, he didn't have a safe switch into it.
Mm-hmm.
So, plus he kind of misplayed with the Crocodile. He should have switched it out so that he could come back in and start knocking off, which might have won him the game, depending on what health the Slowbro was at. But you never know what could have really happened. Hindsight, and I just gotta keep him at 10.
Yeah. I have the Middle-earth Magmortar at number 9. I guess moving on a little bit. At number 9, I have him there because he did lose. I thought it was a good match, but he's having And the Detroit Pincers identified the problem that the Magmortars are going to have, and that's hazard stacking. Detroit Pincers got up both rocks and 2 layers of spikes, I think. And with no ways to get rid of them, the Magmortar's switch-ins become very strained. And with only one thing to bring back Othermon's health and Vaporeon, that thing's going to have to wish pass a lot. And once that thing goes down, then it's just a matter of time before his Mons die from switch-ins. And if you look at his team, what does he have? You could tell from his team, and I think in his team builder, he didn't really have anything for the Slowbro. He had Crocodile, and that's about it. Slowbro is, I think, one of those monsters just kind of looked over as a threat, just because it only has base 110 or 100 special attack, something like that. But it's so bulky and it's so hard to kill, and you could tell that he had a huge problem with it, considering Slowbro got 4 kills, and the hazards killed 2 of the Magmortar's Mons, I'm pretty sure. 1 or 2. And it's just, I see in the future him having such a big problem with hazards. So I did move him down a little bit. He's a good battler. He did have, like you said, he did have interesting sets. I love the physically defensive Mega Gardevoir. I'm pretty sure this week he ran a physically defensive with Calm Mind. And I like that set because it helps with its physical bulk, and if you can set up a Calm Mind, it becomes very hard to kill, and it becomes very deadly. That thing hits like a damn truck. And if you look at the Detroit Pincers side, he didn't have too much to deal with Mega Gardevoir defensively. He's got the Florges, but Psyshock can really take care of the Florges. Chestnutt's not going to wall it, and Slowbro's not going to wall it because Slowbro's not that specially defensive. So the Magmortars, I like their team. If they're gonna they can definitely work over their problem of lack of hazard removal by picking up something during free agency and trading. I don't know if they'll be able to, but if they don't do that, then I can't see them doing well later in this league, because you just set up rocks and they're so detrimental, because one of his biggest offensive threats, that Kyurem Black, it needs hazard removal, just because you're only going to be able to switch it in 3 or 4 times before it's already dead. And then if it's Choice Scarf, that's completely useless, because then it's going to have to switch out, because you can easily switch in something to take the hit. So I have him at 9. If he definitely fixes up the lack of hazard removal and he starts winning some matches, I can definitely see him moving up, because if he gets one thing that removes hazards, his team is going to be one of the biggest threats, just because of how dangerous it's going to be.
Yeah, that hazard weakness is really hurting him. You could tell in the match. It really limited what he could switch in and when he could switch it in and all that. But for my number 9, I had the Iowa Focus Energy.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I have them a lot lower than you do. Yeah. And that's for a few reasons. If you remember back in the post-draft power rankings, I said he has a huge combination of fire and electric weakness. And his only real answer to that is Latias. Now, he goes up against a team with Victini that has V-Create and Bolt Strike, one of the strongest fire move in the game, and one of the strongest electric moves in the game. I believe the strongest, actually. Why do you not bring Latias? He had ways of getting around it, as he said in his planning. Apparently the Jellicent was his plan to deal with it, but a Choice Scarfed Jolly Bold Strike max attack does a minimum of 50% to that Jellicent. So it's not really a switch in. He had Protect on the Fortress to see what it locks itself into.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, 9 times out of 10, Victini is going to be scarfed or banded. But you never know for sure, and that's not something I feel like you should be really counting on. And if you just look at his team, he doesn't really have any safe switch-in, because Weavile, V-Create, Sawk, Zen Headbutt, Jellicent, Bolt Strike, Azumarill, Bolt Strike, Fortress will not take a V-Create at all. It is very, very allergic to that. And even Raikou, the only thing that Big Team can't hit super effectively, it's not going to appreciate a V-Create. It's going to do, like, at least, like, 80% or something.
Mm-hmm.
If it's Choice Banded, that thing ain't living. So I just thought, like, why would you not prepare for that? He said it himself in the video, like, at one point in the fatigue can, and he realized this thing's actually a problem. I also felt as though he was running some pretty standard sets, and it's just, I don't know if he can really be that consistent. He did win week 1, but I don't know, I just don't see him winning consistently.
Yeah, I can see that. I do have him higher, and we'll get to him when we get to where I placed him. But let's move on to, what are we on? Number 8? Number 8.
Yes,
I have the Berkham Bastiodons at number 8. Now, they took a big fall from last week, going from number 3 to number 8. And the reason is because they lost to one of the teams I thought that is just going to be one of the most inconsistent, I don't like their draft. He lost to Sequin Malamar. And his team, I think he will be able to do well later in the season. But his team this week, I just was really unimpressed with what he had to deal with the opposing team. I mean, he brought Zapdos, Crobat, and Skuntank, all 3 defoggers. I didn't see what Skuntank really does for him. It's okay. Heliolisk, he's got so many things to deal with the stuff that the Bastiodons brought. And he brought like almost no real offensive pressure. Plus he has like Zapdos and Heliolisk two things that do pretty much the same thing. And like I just think Zapdos does it better. I think Zapdos is just a better Mon. And it just I don't think this was nearly as good planning or as good playing as he had as last week. And so I moved him down to number 8. I think he can bounce back from this, but I just was really unimpressed by, the planning and the playing this week.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything you just said. I also have him at number 8. And for a few reasons, I'm pretty sure I said this in the past, I feel like his team would be very predictable, what he's going to bring every week. And he did bring a really similar team this week.
Mm-hmm.
And you can probably expect someone to bring like their OUAs very often, especially compared to like stuff like their NUs. He brought Skuntank both his first weeks. And the only thing Skuntank, in my opinion, is really good for is defog. He has a Zapdos and a Crobat, which I just feel like can do that job a lot better. Because Skuntank is it doesn't have good stats. Like, I guess it could get, like, Flamethrower if you want to hit something random. You could, like, Pursuit Trap something, but there are a million things that can do that better. And doesn't even get Stab Knockoff, does get Sucker Punch, which I guess can be nice. But overall, I just, like, don't know why he's bringing it.
Yeah.
Why he even drafted it in the first place. Yeah. But overall, just because of these things, I don't see him doing that consistently. I see him being kind of predictable in the future. And I like to see him do better, because I thought week 1 he was pretty impressive, but then like seeing him lose to a team that we had so low, and it didn't really seem like he was too in control for like that much of the match. So I just feel like he needs to be in the bottom 6.
Yeah, it's also yet to bring the Hoopa Unbound, and I don't think he brought the Feraligatr week 1 either.
Yeah, those are like 2 of the biggest threats on his team, and he hasn't even brought them.
Yeah, he's got these really huge offensive threats, and he hasn't brought them. Now, I understand why he didn't bring the Hoopa Unbound this week. You look at the Malamar's team, he's got Gligar with U-Turn, Jirachi with U-Turn, Darmanitan with U-Turn, Mega Pidgeot with U-Turn. It's like, okay, I understand. Because any of those things hit the Hoopa Unbound, that thing's dying from a U-Turn. So I understand why I didn't bring that. But the Feraligatr, I could see being a huge offensive threat. The Malamars really only have, like, Rotom Wash to deal with it.
But even then, it's not going to really appreciate the Sheer Force Crunch.
Yeah, so even that's not really a big counter to it, and he's just got I think for Alligator is just a really underrated offensive threat in this format because you know what it's going to do. You know what it's going to do, but it doesn't matter.
It really doesn't.
It's going to hit hard, and it can with one Dragon Dance it can easily sweep a lot of teams.
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to plan for if you don't have the right things to deal with it.
Yeah, so he didn't bring a lot of his offensive threats that you think he should be bringing. I understand Hoopa Unbound is not going to be something you're going to be able to bring every week. It's really good, but the fact that it's too slow to take a U-turn, which most teams, they see that Hoopa and they're just going to be like, let's just slap U-turn on 3 of my things. So, I just don't understand like some of the choices he brought. I don't think like he brought the Bastiodon again, okay. And I understand bringing Zapdos and Crobat; those are very good mons. But then, the Skuntank and the Heliolisk and the Zapdos, and then Mega Gallade. I'm fine with Mega Gallade, but I think he could have easily swapped out like Heliolisk for Alligator and had just an extremely threatening team to deal with.
One thing I did find really, really funny though was one of his plans to take down the Darmanitan was like Rocky Helmet Aftermath Skuntank.
That's pretty funny.
Because it would get like O-code by a Flare Blitz, which would do a lot of recoil to Darmanitan, and then also take Rocky Helmet and Aftermath.
I mean,
which would leave it at like really, really low health. Like I think it would die to that and rocks.
I
thought was like pretty funny. But
I mean, it's an interesting. If it can work, but I don't think it worked.
It's like Destiny Bond, kind of though, in a way.
Just a lot less reliable Destiny Bond.
Basically.
So I want, again, just like everyone, I want to see him do well, and I think if he drops like Skuntank in free agency, because he has 60 points left over, he drops that Skuntank, picks up like a BL or another UU, something that fits his team a little better than that Skuntank.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have a very difficult team to deal with.
Yeah, I just feel like it's mainly just those 3 NUs that he doesn't need to have, but does have, which are just really making me really think his team isn't all that good.
Yeah, I mean, you can have quite a few NUs, like Bastiodon, Seismitoad, I'm like, that's fine, I see no problem. Then he just adds in the Skuntank, but yeah, if he does, like, I see a lot of these teams going through some sort of free agency, picking up dropping something, picking up something, because, every team has weaknesses that you need to patch up throughout the season, because you realize after playing with it's like, oh, I really don't have anything for this type or this kind of mon, so I see a lot of teams doing it, and if he does decide to drop the Skuntank for something a little bit better, I can definitely see him doing a lot better throughout the season.
Yeah, I agree.
So, moving on to number 7, I have the Chelsea Shandies. What can I say? They won this week. So they won against the Atlanta Braviary, another good team. And I really saw his team put to work this week. That really strong draft that we saw. It's definitely there. And I think he's learning how to use it. Mega Charizard still hasn't gotten any kills, which was unfortunate this week. I think the Mega Charizard could have been a huge problem for the Atlanta Braviary, much bigger than it was this week. But the reason I only have him number 7, where he's not in the top 6, just because like the others that are below him that also won, I'm really worried about the consistency. I don't know how consistent he's going to be. Last week wasn't that really strong of a showing. This week was a pretty decent, pretty strong showing. His planning was good. His playing was good. And so for a lot of these teams, even a few spots above, I don't know how consistent they're going to be as compared to the top teams. And I can see him playing well. And if he plans and plays as well as he did this week, I can see him doing well. But if he plans and plays as well as he did last week, there's going to be a big problem. So I love his team. Like it would be a team I could see myself drafting and myself wanting to use in this kind of format. But we're really going to see in the next week or two how well he's actually going to do as a battler, because I don't see his draft being a problem at all. I think it was the best draft in this league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Now, for my number 7, I had these Quim Malamar. I moved them up quite a bit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason I do that is partially because I got their first win this week, and second, because I really think so far, with the past 2 weeks, he's been pretty consistent as far as his planning goes. I think his planning has been very good, especially considering I don't feel like he has a very good team, considering, because with the situation he was in where he had to pick his team after everyone was already done, a lot of the obvious big threats were already taken.
Mm-hmm.
So, plus he was very limited as far as like some of the smaller tiers go, such as BL.
Yeah, OUB. Those are just those are very small.
Those are very slim. Even before everyone had picked, there wasn't too much there. But I feel like his team, considering the situation, wasn't all that bad. But considering the situation, it was also probably one of the least good teams. But I feel like he's been using it very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And just due to that sheer fact, I feel like he deserves to be at 7, which is still not like people top 6 is playoffs, basically. People we assume are in playoffs at the moment, but that keeps changing because you never know what's going to happen.
There's 9 more weeks.
Yep, but I put him at 7 just at the borderline of that because I see his planning being consistent. His team, I don't see being consistent. Mm-hmm. It depends on if he can just make his planning that good. Because in my opinion, like, a really bad team could do really well with good planning.
Yeah.
So I don't know if his planning will be strong enough to keep him up in a higher spot. But at the same time, so far in the past 2 weeks, I've seen it be very good and executed pretty well. So I feel like he deserves to be moved up to about 7.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's just this is still gonna change and be refined over the coming weeks. Still only in week 2.
Yeah, until we get about 7 weeks in, things aren't really going to be all that solidified.
Yeah.
Until we can kind of estimate who's going to be in playoffs.
Yeah. But let's start moving up to the top 6. At number 6, I have the Atlanta Breviary. I moved him down from 4. He was 4 last week. I moved him down just because he lost to the Shandies. And, it's not like he lost to a bad team. I moved the Shandies, he's 1 below the Atlanta Breviary. But just like, it's another problem with his team that I see. He doesn't have extremely hard-hitting offense. I know he can get Salamence with Dragon Dance, so I'm not worried about that. And Togekiss kind of hits hard. Virizion can kind of hit hard, and Mew, depending on the set, kind of hit hard. But his defenses this week, I didn't like. Rotom, I think he had a defensive Rotom H, probably for the Charizard.
I think so.
Yeah, and I don't. And then, especially defensive Tentacruel. And the problem with that kind of core is, typing-wise, it's very good. Like, Fire Water, if you can get a Fire Water Grass core like Rotom H, Tentacruel, Virizion, that's fantastic. Having a defensive core of Rotom H and Tentacruel, not that great. There's no instant recovery. That's why I don't like putting... there's a difference between walls with instant recovery and walls without instant recovery. Walls without instant recovery are not nearly as good as walls with instant recovery. So, he's just... I don't know. I think he can still do well. I still really like his team because it has a lot of good things to it. It's very balanced, but it's just a problem with his team, and I saw that problem show this week just because he didn't have... It was hard for him to break through the defense of the Chelsea Shandies and also take the offense from them. So in the coming weeks, I think he's still going to do well, and that's why he's still in the top 6. I think he's still going to do well, but he's really got to his team. The whole point is he's got to plan very well with his team to be able to win. Like, that's the big thing with his team. His team's very versatile, and so it's going to be hard to predict, what he's going to bring and what's going to even be on the mons that he's bringing. Because, like, Mew, what the hell is that going to have? Rotom H, is that going to be offensive or defensive? Salamence? You can actually run a defensive Salamence. Apparently he gets Wish. I just learned that, like, not even a week ago.
Yeah, I found that out as well. That was crazy.
Yeah. And, like, Togekiss, it can be offensive or defensive. Tentacruel, if he runs offensive Tentacruel with Swords Dance, I'll be very impressed one week. And Virizion, I don't think anyone really knows what it does, just because it's a Virizion. It's the least used of all the whatever they're called, the legendary somethings.
The horses.
The legendary horses. Why not?
I think they're horses. I mean, they look like horses.
Yeah, they're whatever.
Terrakion's like a bull. Keldio's a pony.
Yeah, something like that. Keldio's a unicorn.
It's a pony.
Okay, whatever.
It looks like a pony.
Yeah, but it's got a horn. It's a unicorn.
Yeah, well, I mean,
but anyway,
Pokemon, but okay.
Yeah, but anyway, his team is just going to require really good planning, and it's going to require really good playing. Like, there's some teams that, like, they just have really good things that are really good at what they do. And so you can just, like, I know this thing in its standard role is going to be able to punch a hole through that team. Like Mamoswine. Mamoswine can pretty much always, in its standard role of just, like, straight offense, punch a hole through almost any team. But he doesn't have that kind of mon on his team, and I think he played well this week, but I think the Shandy's played better and planned a little bit better. I'm not as worried about the consistency of the Atlanta Braviary as other teams. I think it's just going to be hard for them to win and win big on weeks just because of how their team structure is.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things you just said. He definitely does have to plan well to get his team to work properly.
Mm-hmm.
And as for my number 6, I had the Vespiquen Park Rangers. I kept them at 6 because I feel like he just got his first win. So obviously I feel like he, improved a bit. Especially considering what team was he going up against? He was going against the DMR Challenge, so he wasn't a team that we really marked that high.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I thought his planning was really good. I thought his execution was pretty good. It was the late game where he was really not doing all that high. It was 5-2, and then it ended in a 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, you could call that a huge you could call that a comeback for the Shadow Absols, but it wasn't really a comeback for them. It was more or less him just playing around his Mega Absol and his Galvantula weird. He, like, sacked things off. I wasn't exactly sure what he was trying to do sometimes.
Yeah.
He didn't have a rock move on his Aerodactyl, which I found really weird. Either that or he just didn't want to risk a Stone Edge miss. I'm not 100% sure what the situation was. But he went for an Earthquake on the Galvantula instead of Stone Edge, which would have obviously killed it. And it didn't have full HP, so it didn't have a Focus Sash, so that wouldn't be why. He did use this Zoroark really well, because it confused me so much, because it was a Manaphy, and it used Pursuit, and I was like, okay, he has Pursuit Manaphy. This guy's MLG is all hell. And then it went for, like, Knock Off and Sucker Punch, and I was like, this guy is really doing something crazy to be running Pursuit, Knock Off, Sucker Punch, Manaphy. But then it gets hit, and it's Zoroark, and I'm just like, oh. I honestly did not realize it until it became a Zoroark, and then I just felt like a dumb person.
Yeah, Manaphy didn't actually get any kills this week, so.
Yeah, I just thought that was, like, a funny little tidbit of information. But, I keep him at number 6, because that's still people who we expect to make playoffs at this point. But I don't see him being all too consistent, considering week 1 and what happened this week. Because he went up against 2 teams that we originally had really low, and one of them he got beat. I don't know if I would call it badly, but it was kind of bad. And then on this one, he was doing good at the beginning, but you got to be consistent throughout the entire match. You can't just peter out late game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I keep him at number 6.
Yep. Moving on to number 5, I have the Iowa Focus Energy. I moved him up from number 6 because I think he's going to do well. I see him playing his team pretty well. This week, I don't think he planned around the Victini at all. Yeah, he said mid-match, like, oh wow, this Victini is actually a problem. And like he said before, his one thing to really deal with the Victini, the Latias, he doesn't bring. And so that's going to be a problem. If you can't really identify key threats on the opposing team and plan for them accordingly, that is definitely going to be a problem. This match, though, that he had, I won't say he would have won it, but it was pretty hacksy. The Red Shells got like 3 crits in a row on... I don't remember exactly what he got 3 crits on. I think it was the Jellicent. He got 3 crits on the Jellicent in a row. And the Jellicent would have lived. It would have been able to, stay around for a little while. I think the Starmie was like crit Thunderbolts on the Jellicent, and it took 3 of them.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, it took 3 of them, which is actually pretty damn impressive.
I'm pretty sure the Jellicent was recovering, and that's why it was so hard to kill.
But still, having that done, it did kill the Jellicent, which was his one mod to take a V-Create from the Victini.
Mm-hmm,
I don't think he thought...
Strike.
Yeah, I don't think that's nearly as much of a problem, and the reason is because when something's scarfed like that, it becomes a big guessing game as to what he's going to do, and it's going to be a lot of predictions. So, because it was scarfed, I don't think it was as big of a problem as long as he had a way to deal with the V-Creates and the Bolt Strikes somehow. Because he has the Raikou to deal with the Bolt Strikes, he has the Jellicent to take the V-Creates, and as long as he can keep the Victini switching, it wouldn't have been as much of a problem. But because he didn't think of it as much of a problem, he didn't plan that well around it, and I can see that being a problem later in the weeks. But I think he's been playing well. I think he's been playing pretty well, and that's why he's still at number 5. I can see him being at least at this point, I can see him being a consistent player, able to win battles week in and week out. I don't know if he's going to be the most consistent. This loss, I don't know. Like you can tell, I didn't really count this loss too harshly against him, just because I saw the match and I'm just like, I'm not saying he would have won without the crits, but those crits sealed the game for him. And I mean, once that Jellicent went down, it was definitely game over, because then he has nothing for the Victini V creates.
Basically,
it's just going to be hard for him. And I mean, he did have things that kill the Victini. Azumarill takes on Victini pretty damn well, especially if it's, I don't remember what set it was, but especially if it's like Choice Banded with Aqua Jet, is going to do a hell of a lot of damage to Victini. So he had things to deal with the Washington Red Shells team. I mean, Azumarill deals with his team pretty well, because it really hits the Victini. Mega Aggron takes it from it, but it kills the Hydreigon. If it has Ice Punch, it can deal pretty good damage to the Shaman. The Grand Bull doesn't really wall it too much. It has Intimidate, and Starmie doesn't wall it. So I think he brought a good team. I think he could have done better if he, instead of it's hard to say what he should have switched out for it, but if he did bring the Latias, I think he would have done better. I think he could have won if he did have the Latias, just because then the Red Shells don't have too much to deal with the Latias. They have Hydreigon, and they've got Granbull, but Granbull's not much of a counter to Latias.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it can take one hit, but then it can play rough it, but it doesn't have reliable recovery, so it can only switch in so much.
Yeah, and then the Hydreigon, if the Latias is scarfed, then the Hydreigon can't deal with it because it's one, Draco Meteor away from dying. So it would have definitely been good. I love. Then again, I'm really biased. I love using Latias. I think it's better than Latios, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So he did well. I see him doing well in future weeks. I just think this week was a little bit, I don't know. I didn't really count it against him, but I didn't really say like, he should have won. So I moved him up to 5 just because I think other people did worse than he did.
Mm-hmm.
So he's at my number 5.
Yeah. And for me, I had my number 5, the Atlanta Braviary.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest complaint about what he did this week, I don't think his planning was that bad. I think it was pretty good. But what killed him in the match was he let his Salamence go down way too early.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess it was like kind of mid to late game, but like it was still like 3-3, 4-4, something like that. But the game just like sped up so fast once that Salamence went down.
Yeah,
because that was like his win condition because they had outrage and he had no fairy, so he could just freely outrage. The only thing to take an outrage was Bronzong, but Bronzong, no reliable recovery. It's going to get whittled down. If he would have saved that Salamence until his opponent's team was whittled down more and just sent that out last, he probably could have won. I'm not saying he would have, but I mean, I feel like he would have had a lot better shot if he could have just whittled down his opponent's team more. I feel like he just rushed the game a bit by sending out the Salamence and outraging.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like he could have played around that a bit better.
Yeah, you never want to send out something with outrage too early, just when you know something can take a hit.
Yeah, because I forget what it was, but he sent in something that could take one outrage and then kill it.
Probably,
that was really his only thing left.
Probably the Quagsire. If I remember correctly, I think it might have been the Quagsire that took the hit and then just ice beamed it or something. I don't remember exactly what happened in the match.
Yeah, and as you said before, his team is like really hyper balanced, so it really does come down to planning.
Mm-hmm.
Although I feel like his planning has been pretty good. However, I feel like he'll be he's not going to be a huge win team that gets into playoffs. I think he will probably be like maybe like a 7-4, 6-5 kind of team that gets into playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, his team is really balanced, but like just wrong preparation can really hurt him going into a match.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just really feel like he didn't play that bad. Like it was mainly just that Salamence misplay. And I'm pretty sure he acknowledged it himself that he probably shouldn't have let his Salamence go down at that point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hopefully that's a like one-off mistake that he'll correct next week, and I could definitely see him still winning quite a few matches.
Yeah, I mean, I still have him at number 6. It's still a good team. It's just it comes down to the planning.
No person can complain about someone being in the top 6.
Yeah, and it's funny, Mew. Almost no one can use Mew right. Like this isn't a knock on Tai. Mew's so hard to use right, just because it does so many things. It's like, what the hell do you do with it?
Yeah, unless you're versing a team such as maybe like the Toronto Tarantrums, who have a lot of 4x weaknesses.
Yeah, it's just
figuring out exactly what Mew to use could be a bit tough.
Yeah, most people use it as a patch to their team, and that's good, but it doesn't really give Mew a chance to shine. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on to number 4, I have the Vespiquen Park Rangers. They did win this week, and although the endgame was shaky for them, the endgame was definitely very shaky for them. I didn't think they were going to lose, but they definitely could have had a better differential. But the reason I moved him up one spot. I feel like he's going to be one of the more consistent players. I really like his team. I think his team is very good. And, he won this week against a team that were kind of like, we don't know how well they're going to do. But I see him. The week 1 was kind of like it sucked for them, and I think they realized, oh man, I actually have to start really planning and playing well. And I saw his planning was very good, and his playing beginning, mid, and start of late game was very good, and then late game it kind of fell apart. But if he can just patch up that kind of weak late game play, I see him winning most of his matches. I see him definitely being a very top contender for the for the playoffs. But if he starts falling into the not planning as well, he's just going to move straight. He's going to move straight back down. So we'll see how he does. I have him at 4, which is very high. But I am again. I say it's for like every the players this week because all of them are basically 1-1. I'm just a little worried about the consistency on how they're going to do week in and week out. If he keeps up, if he takes this win and brings with it the momentum into next week and wins out next week, I can see him at least being number 4 again, depending on how other teams do. I don't know how other teams are going to do, but I can see if he can bring that momentum, then I can see him doing very well. But at the same time, if he starts slacking off like he did last week, it's going to be bad. So I have him at number 4 just because I think he's doing better than the teams below him, but the teams above him I see going to be doing better right now.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. And that one point you just brought up that I really would like to stress is that a lot of the teams have the exact same record, very close to the same differential. So it's really, really, really opinionated, the power rankings at the moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that are like 1-1, 0, 1-1, +1.
Yeah, there aren't many teams like pulling ahead or falling too far behind. It's still really anyone's race.
Yeah.
But as for my number 4, I had the Chelsea Shandies. Mm-hmm. I have them a few spots higher than you. I actually have them in like the playoffs area. I don't even know if I should be referring to it as the playoffs area that much, considering how early we are. But
yeah,
I mean that's technically what it is. To be fair, but I have him there because I really just wanted to see him get that one win. I really thought I had confidence he would pick up a win this week or next week, maybe, depending on, how his match against Ty went. The only real complaint I really thought that he should have done better this match was bringing a Dragon Dance Charizard. Because if you look at Ty's team, what does he have to really stop that? A Choice Scarf Salamence? Still not really the best answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dragon Dance, Roost, Dragon Claw, and Flare Blitz honestly could have swept Ty's team after 1 or 2 Dragon Dances. And another thing that I thought he did very well in the match was I had talked to Ty about his preparation and whatnot, and he was really, really prepared for Keldeo. He was really scared of Keldeo. Keldeo still picked up 2 kills in the match. One of the things that his opponent prepared the most for did very well in the match, which I thought was very impressive on his part. The only thing I didn't like was the Mega Charizard being defensive. It just didn't make much sense to me. Otherwise, I thought he brought very good sets. He brought the Bronzong to take hits from the Salamence, which was good, because that was the only thing that could really switch in onto it safely. But even then, Fire Blast, but he could deal with it. And then he had the Quagsire, which was able to, I believe you said it was the thing that killed it, right?
I don't remember exactly. I didn't get to. I mean, I watched the battle, but it's been a little while because their replay didn't save. That whole thing with Showdown being a little wonky last week. So.
I just think him preserving some. I forget. We don't know what it is, but he had something that he preserved to high health.
Yeah.
And he just was able to, which was very smart on his part, just to make sure that when the Salamence comes in and starts outraging, he has something to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something you really got to focus on, because a lot of people play turn by turn when they really need to be thinking about the late game. So I thought he did very well, and as you said, his team is probably one of the best, if not the best, in the league. Because it's balanced, it's got huge offensive threats, it's just good, got good defense. Just overall a really good team. I think this week he kind of proved that he can use it right. So I have him at 4, because I still think the teams above him are doing better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I really think he's doing good and I'm pretty confident he'll make playoffs, even if it's barely scraping by in there. I feel like he's good.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for him to bring that Tangrowth Slowking core one week. That's going to just be a bitch to get through.
It can be a bitch to get through, especially if someone doesn't have the right things to get rid of.
Yeah, dual regenerator cores are so good, and that's why I just love his team. He's got one of the best, at least one of my favorite regen cores, especially when Slowking used to be RU. It was like that was so stupid how good it was.
Yeah, Slowking, as you said earlier with Slowbro, Slowking definitely an underrated threat at some points. Yeah. With the insane coverage it can get and its amazing bulk and regenerator. Yeah. It's really good.
So, moving on, and I think we agree with the last three. Well, number 3, I have the Washington Red Shells.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, we agree for the last 3, so this is going to be Washington Red Shells. I think they have the second best team. Like I said, in the post-draft power rankings, I think they have an amazing team. Really strong offense, Victini, and he really brought the offense this week. Victini and Hydreigon, that is such a hard offensive core to wall. And then you patch up some of the offense with Starmie and its coverage, and then you have the Shaman with its coverage. It's like he brought the offense this week, and then he has his walls being Mega Aggron, Grand Ball, and I think Shaman was also defensive, especially defensive. But I could be a little bit wrong on that one. But he brought an extremely strong offensive core, and he brought the really good defense. I really like his planning. And yeah, again, the match was hacksy, and maybe without the crits, I don't know how the match would have gone. He still had Victini. Isle Focus Energy didn't really plan for that, and he's just got that underrated threat, and I think he's using his team well. I think last week he was getting used to the team because, a lot of times you draft a team, you're familiar with the mons, but you're not terribly used to them. And then that first week, it's like, I didn't do so well. And then you start getting used to it, and you're starting to play with it better. And I think this week he's starting to play with it better. And I think next week he's going to do really well. And I think the coming weeks he's just going to do well, just because his team is very good, and he's got a lot of, just very, very versatile mons that are also hard hitting. So I see him doing well. He's at number 3. He's still 1-1, and if he keeps winning, I can definitely see him being one of the teams that makes the playoffs. Now, again, week 2, but we'll see.
Yep, week 2, a lot of things can change, and I also had him at my number 3. And it's funny that you say you thought he was bringing the offense, and because the main thing about his team this week that I found really interesting was how good his defensive planning really was. Because he was going up against an incredibly offensive team, Nick's team, which has huge threats on it, like the Raikou, the Weavile, and just Talonflame.
And the Azumarill.
The Azumarill, all those things, big offensive threats.
Yeah.
And he had brought a really defensive team. Like, every mon on his team could take a hit one way or the other. He had, and if you looked at his EV spreads, he had random defense and speed EVs. Like, you could tell he ran his calcs, he knew what he was doing. He had that Culverberry Starmie, which I always find to be a really interesting set, because not only does it weaken the attack, but it also, if it's a knockoff specifically, it really weakens it, what it could possibly be.
Yeah.
And his wall breaking potential was really huge, especially against a team like Nyx, because Victini, really, really good wall breaker if you don't have the right things to deal with it. Like a Lottie Twin or Heatran or things that can handle it. But if you're playing OU and you have a Choice Band of Victini on your team, that thing just tears through any stall team you run into. And I just thought his really defensive planning was really good. He had an answer to basically everything on his opponent's team defensively.
Yeah.
And then he had the Victini, which was kind of his biggest pedestal for offense. It was his only really dedicated offensive mon that he brought on his team, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, since it matches up so well against his opponent's team, and
matches up well against a lot of teams.
It does, but against his team specifically, since it can hit 8 of his mons super effectively with either a V-Create or a Bull Strike. And overall, I just think he prepared very well. I can see him preparing very well in the future. You could clearly tell he put a lot of time into it. So I definitely think he'll keep performing well, even though he is 1-1. I still see him doing very well.
Yeah. Again, like that last week, I think he did take home a pretty big loss, but I think, again, it's more of him getting used to the team.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, that one loss was against one of the other teams that we consider to be very good.
Yeah, so I think he's going to do well. I think he's one of the teams that's going to do consistently well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and as you said, his draft is probably second best.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah, I think it's just really great. But moving on to number 2, I have the Toronto Tyrantrums. They are one of the 2 teams that are 2-0. I think they're planning very well, and they planned very well this week. The Reuniclus picking up 3 kills this week, and Staraptor picking up another 2. He has a very good offensive core. I think Reuniclus is one of those really underrated offensive threats. People look at it and it's just like, it's pretty good, but, it's not great. But now that I think Joey's been using it, people look at it a little bit differently. Like, Reuniclus, got to prepare for that. So, I mean, granted, it's against a team that we don't think that's going to do very well, just because the Rhyhorns just don't have the offense required to really break through a lot of teams. And we definitely saw I thought the Toronto Tyrantrums were in control this match. They played through. It was only a 2-0, but that's still, it's still a good win. It wasn't I don't think it was a very close 2-0. I think he was in control. And it would have been a 3-0 if Staraptor didn't kill itself. Because I think it died to Bravebird Recoil. So, I saw the planning this week. They didn't even bring their Mega. Didn't need to. It was just a quick. It was a pretty clean win for the Toronto Tyrantrums, and now they're 2-0. I think they're going to be very, very consistent, and again, week 2, but I see them making the playoffs. I mean, they did last time. They were very consistent in the NBL, and I see them probably being very consistent in this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with a lot of things you said. It was actually a really surprisingly close game, considering the situation.
Mm-hmm.
It was mainly due to the fact that he misplayed and accidentally let his Landers go down too soon. But he managed to come back with the Reuniclus, because the Kim only didn't have knockoff, so it really couldn't do too much to it. And he was able to just sweep with that. As you can see, he got 3 kills. It was just really just the Reuniclus show once it got down to the end game.
It's just one of those threats that just people don't look at as a huge threat, and then once it sweeps a team, you're just like, whoa, okay, never mind. I should have planned for that a little bit better.
Yeah, it's kind of like, imagine the Crocoon, except psychic type, and instead of having to rest, it's got recover.
So imagine Crocoon, but better.
Basically just Crocoon, but just better.
Yeah, and
I guess we can knock
just,
it off. But, I mean, don't worry about it.
Yeah, and not walled entirely by anything with water absorb.
Yeah, basically.
There's not too much to say about him. I think he's just playing very well, and I think he's planning well. So he's going to be doing well in these coming weeks. That's why he's at my number 2. So the last one, and if you haven't been able to figure it out already, based on what's on the screen, and also through process of elimination, we have the Detroit Pincers at number 1. The Detroit Pincers are currently number 1 in the league, and they've just been... their draft was one thing that we're just looking at, and Mega Ampharos, I'm not really a big fan of that in this kind of format, but they're planning extremely well, and they're playing extremely well. Granted that this week, it was kind of like the Middle-earth Magmortar didn't really have anything for the Slowbro this week, besides knockoff on the Crocodile. So it was hard for the Middle-earth Magmortar to take down the Slowbro, and it's very good of of the Detroit Pistons to bring the Slowbro. I know he said that he was kind of iffy on bringing it, and then it's this thing that gets 4 kills this week. It has one of the most kills in the league already after 1 week. And his defense, you look at his defense this week, and it's just disgusting. Chestnut floor, just Slowbro. That is so hard to break through. And you could tell based on how, the Magmortars, their Infernape, which was that Swords Dance sweeper, good luck breaking through both Florges and Slowbro. It doesn't have any fire moves. And even still, Slowbro just walls it to hell and back. I don't think he really had to bring in the Alakazam, and the Mamoswine didn't really do anything. And it was just, throughout the, early game, it was Mega Ampharos doing some stuff. It did go down. Chestnut setting up the hazards, and then dying subsequently, later. But it was just, I thought it was great planning, just because he recognized that hazards were the Middle Earth Magmortar's biggest problem, as of right now. And he sets up spikes and stealth rocks. And he just shuts down offensive threats like the Kyurem Black with that. Kyurem Black didn't even get a kill. No kills this week. I thought it was probably the best planning and playing this week. And he's 2-0. I think it's +8. I think he's one I see just being able to be at the top consistently throughout this entire season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with a lot of things you said. And one thing that I really like that he did, that I think a lot of teams need to realize, I'm not saying people haven't realized it yet, but even if something is a bad matchup, he brought the Chestnut this week, what's Chestnut going to deal with on the North Magmortar's team besides Crocodile? Breloom, kind of. But even then, there are things Breloom can do, there's the freaking Toxic Heal set, which can probably beat out the Chestnut. There's the
Technician Hidden Power Flying.
Yeah, that's something that they ran. If you watch the GBA, it's possible. It could work.
Some Steve tried to run.
It can potentially deal with it. Vaporeon, I guess it would just be a stalwart, to be honest, if it's physically defensive Vaporeon.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be much of a stalwart. That Chestnut would win.
I mean, the Chestnut can't really OHKO it with a Wood Hammer, and the Vaporeon's just going to wish it'll get Toxic off eventually.
Yeah, but then there's Leech Seed, and
it can Leech Seed it, but at the same time,
I mean, it's hard to say, but
and the Vaporeon can Ice Beam it.
That's true.
It would just be. It's not really the best method to handle Vaporeon.
Yeah.
And even then, Wood Hammer, recoil damage, Vaporeon's got a lot of HP.
That does.
It's just not a perfect answer.
Yeah, and it cannot wall the Kyurem Black, the Mega Gardevoir, nor the Drapion. And if the Infernape had a fire move, then it could not wall that Infernape either.
And Nidoking also destroys it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Lantern, but if you really got to plan that much for Lantern.
Well, it is quite the specially defensive wall. At least in my opinion, I think it's pretty good at that.
Yeah, but I don't feel like there's much Lantern can really do.
Yeah.
It's just gonna Scald and Volt Switch, Thunder Wave, basically it. It does do what it does good, but what it does isn't that unpredictable.
That's
unless he wants to be real and run Sucker Punch.
Choice Scarf.
Choice Scarf, Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
But I mean, he's just playing very well.
He was playing very well. He planned very well, and that Slowbro could also handle that Crocodile. At the end, it did kind of come down to a misplay with the Crocodile, switching it out, not switching it out. But even then, if he kept the Slowbro healthy, it could have taken a knockoff.
Yeah.
And if it would have taken one knockoff, and it had gone into some kind of stall war of some sorts, the Slowbro could win, because after taking one knockoff, the rest of them aren't going to do as much.
Yeah. Slowbro is just, it's so good, and he at the end of his planning, he realized Slowbro probably going to put in a lot of work, and it gets 4 kills. And you just see that the Magmortars did not have much for it. I mean, something doesn't get 4 kills if you have a lot for it.
Yeah. I definitely think his planning was really good. And I definitely see him just keep doing good, honestly.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely going to be interesting. Next week, I don't know who he plays. I think he plays the Berkhamsted Bastardon, so that should be a good match. And we'll see if he can keep up this win streak. He's going to be the team to beat.
He will be.
So that's going to wrap up our Week 2 power rankings. If you have your own power rankings, please leave them in the comment section below.
Be afraid to tell me how stupid I am?
Yeah, I mean, if you think we're stupid, go ahead. I don't care. I can take the criticism. And I'm sure Nick is still going to complain that he's one spot lower than Martin on my list.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so...
And if you say that I'm stupid in the comments, I mean, I'll only cry a little.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He'll take it like a small child. But anyway, that's all I got for today. My name's Burke. His name is Xavier. We'll see y'all later.